Mini episode 1513 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello everyone, welcome to our FDH Lounge preview of the AFC North for 2022. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here with fellow FDH Lounge original dignitary Chris Galloway. We're going to be looking at the North, but I'm going to let you know a couple of things here at the outset. If you want to know our macro level thoughts for the season, go back to our first preview that we did this year, our AFC East preview. That's the one where we historically kind of tackle any of that at the outset on it. As well, this is going to be unusual for this division in that we're going to refer you to a whole lot of material. You might expect us to take an hour on the Browns alone, but we have spent significantly more time on that on the Browns. If you want to hear our thoughts on the Deshaun Watson situation, this was not long after the acquisition. Mini episodes 1459 and 1460, as well as Chris's and my thoughts on the wisdom of the matter and the ramifications of it. Our thoughts are very divergent, of course. And the Browns preview for the season, mini episode 1502, we looked at the offense, 1503, defense, and special teams. So we've already covered the Browns to a decent amount. We'll have a little bit to say about them in the context of the division here, but it's not necessary for us to get as much into that as we do the other teams. For our divisional previews for this year, I'm using a feature from Fantasy Football Draftology 2022, available on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com. One run-on sentence for each team in the division here. So I have this in front of me. Here's what I have queued up for the AFC North with my prediction of the order of finish. And remember that I wrote this when we still didn't know how long Watson's suspension was going to be. So that's why I kind of leave it open-ended there when I'm talking about it. But my overall thoughts on the Browns, I think, are pretty much the same as when I wrote this. I start with Baltimore, my pick for the first-place team. One of the best draft hauls of the past decade, combined with a manageable schedule, sets the table for a real prove-it season for Lamar Jackson. Cincinnati. Joe Burrow no longer has a shower curtain for an offensive line, but a brutal schedule and the pressure of expectations render this team an excellent candidate for the Super Bowl hangover. Cleveland, just like a year ago, the Browns entered the season with a top 5 roster and now a franchise QB, and all that was lost was honor, as the saying goes, but questions about the length of a possible Watson suspension threaten to negate the softest schedule faced by any AFC contender this side of Indianapolis. Pittsburgh, with the weakest quarterback situation in the division, aside from whenever Watson is suspended, continuing to overachieve relative to the level of talent on the roster, looks to finally be coming to an end. Now, again, I look at this and I have a little more certitude when I look at the picture of the division. It's interesting that you mentioned to me off air, Chris, that you don't have the same feeling of certitude looking at this division, that you see it as something more amorphous, depending on the ability of some teams to rise and fall in the overall picture.
Yeah, I look at this division as really 4 teams that are all like, who's going to get 10 wins and win the division? Or are we going to have 4 teams sitting there around 8 or 9 wins? And honestly, I think I haven't looked recently, but I think Vegas has pretty much got the 3 of the teams are right around 9.5 is their over/under, don't they? I mean, I think Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Cleveland at one point in the offseason were all right around 9.5 as their predicted win totals, with the Steelers around 7.5. So clearly, if that is the case, and again, I have to look and see what the most current over-unders are, that Vegas feels the same way. You know, I look at this division, and I agree with you once again, much to my just anger. The Ravens just had a great draft. But again, how much do young players fill holes that they have? Their wide receiving core is still, marred, and Lamar Jackson is still a glorified running back. I don't care. I mean, prove it to me. I haven't, maybe this is the year. Maybe year 5 is when he comes out and he's throwing accurate balls outside the numbers. And maybe he never has to because of the way they designed that defense around his legs.
Maybe.
But they got bit by injuries last year. They were still a dangerous team. I agree with you. They're my pick to win the division narrowly. My second place team, on my pick, was the Browns, narrowly edging out the Bengals. Although I do love what the Bengals did in the offseason of trying to give Burrow some offensive line help. I agree with you. They're playing a first place schedule.
Yep.
Which they have not had to do, and they are going to have the bullseye on them this year in the AFC. So there's no hiding or sneaking on. Also, I think this team kind of got hot at the right moment last year.
Right.
And again, they got teams like Kansas City after that Buffalo game where they mentally Kansas City was spent.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't want to say fluke because they earned it, and then they almost won the Super Bowl.
Right.
They hung in there to the end, and going into the fourth quarter, we were like, my God, the Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl, but they didn't. But I just to your point, I view that as sort of like a meteoric rise that this year is just screaming for something to go sideways. And for the hangover, as you described it, for that traditional Super Bowl losing team to sort of fall down. So I think they're going to. I think the Browns, despite all their problems, are going to find a way to get to somewhere around 9 or 10 wins and be right there in that second place position behind, probably 9 wins, right behind the Ravens at 10. And then again, I'm not saying the Bengals are going to. I think they're also going to have 9 wins, but I think the Browns take the tiebreak. And then I have the Steelers, right there with 8 wins and 8 and 9. Look, even if I think Mitch is an upgrade over Roethlisberger the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they made the playoffs last year with Ben Roethlisberger not able to throw. Mitch is an upgrade in terms of athleticism. At some point, if they go to Kenny Pickett, that's probably the right move, even though, I love me some Mitchell Trubisky. But, that's going to come with a price if they make the move to Pickett in week 4, week 5. He's going to be a rookie quarterback, and he's going to stink it up at times, which will cost them games. And long term, they probably ought to bite the bullet, and play him at least half the season.
Yeah.
You invested a first-round pick in him, so unless you are telling your fans and everybody else that, well, we didn't really believe in him, then you're playing him at some point this year. I think Tomlin is conservative enough that I think, weeks 1 through 4, he starts Trubisky in an effort to get this team off on the right foot and see if they can win some games and make something happen. Because at the end of the day, Tomlin is a veteran player coach, right?
Right.
He respects his veterans. His veterans love him. And he's not going to walk in that locker room on week 1 and say, Kenny Pickett's our starter, and those veterans look around the room and go, well, there goes that season.
Right.
So Tomlin isn't going to do that. He's going to come in and he's going to say, look, Trubisky's won a bunch of games. He's been to a Pro Bowl. He's our best chance to win some games, certainly in the first half of the season. And I think that's what he's going to do because he respects his veterans. And I think that's the right call. But if you are going to hand the kingdom over to Kenny Pickett at some point, you got to play him, right? I mean,
right.
So at some point there has to be a point in the season where you say, okay, it's your team now. Maybe it's after the break. Maybe those first 4 games we went 2-2 and we don't like what we see, and fuck it, we're going to bite the bullet now. But you can't start the season off with the rookie, I think, in Pittsburgh, of all places. I don't think it would be tolerated in that locker room. So again, Browns, they've got their quarterback problem. In theory, they have it solved for the long term, but for this season, it's a problem. And as much as I like Brissett, he's the kind of guy that's good for a few games, most likely. And then after that, it's So I wouldn't be shocked if the Browns go 3-1, 2-2 in the first 4 games with Brissett, and we get a little bit of hope, and then the Brissett wheels kind of come off after that, and then the Browns are sort of limping, hoping to get to Watson, which we've already seen in the preseason is rusty as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew that, right? I mean, he's looked good in practices at times, what we've been able to see. I mean, granted, he got a little bit of one game. He looked terrible. And how much of that was just the vanilla and the players he's playing with and not used to it? That's a lot of it. But the reality is 11 more weeks of him not playing after missing all of last year isn't going to help him. Now, I've heard some nonsense out there talking by media folks like California and others that are like, well, he's done. He's never going to be the same quarterback. I'm like, he's 26 and younger than Baker Mayfield. Can we just relax? I know he's missed. He'll have missed some time, but I think it's really premature to be like he's now done as a quarterback. Again, I think he still has all those tools, but we're not going to see it till later in the season. And look, Browns fans, it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks of him on the field to bust that rust off, at least. So this whole idea, like, we just got to stay above water, with Brissett until Watson comes back. Yeah, except for the fact that he's going to come back and hasn't played in 2 years.
Yeah.
And he's going to look like it. So this whole idea that the Browns will win their last, 6 games or something is just like nonsense, absolute nonsense. So this is going to be a Browns team that, a lot like last year, with an inaccurate, broken Baker Mayfield, they won 8 games last year with a quarterback that couldn't
right.
show. Listen, maybe I'm nuts, but I do think that with Brissett and eventually Watson, I think they can win one more game with better talent, with slightly better talent in some spots on the defense, solidified the way that defense got better. I just think they can get one game better this year to be just above the Mendoza line and compete for a wild card spot down the stretch. That's how I see it. They won 8 games with a terrible quarterback play last year. I think with slightly better quarterback play, they can win 9.
Well, they're also in a dramatically tougher AFC, so there is that this year. I want to ask you.
But I do think that their schedule's more favorable this year than last.
It's very interesting because it starts off pretty soft, and then the donut hole in the middle is pretty brutal, and then I think the back end is softer than the middle is. I want to ask you a 2-part question here about the Browns offense, and shockingly it has nothing to do with Watson. So, number 1, in watching the preseason games, and again, I haven't watched, but I have kept up with what's happening. So much as I might a team that's in another market, so to speak here. But it seems pretty clear at this point, I mean, especially when you don't have Amari Cooper in there, and he should be available, I guess, in the regular season. But I mean, this wide receiver room, I don't know if you would concur with me, but to me, it looks minute ball thin at this point. And number 2, if what happens with Brissett happens, what you're projecting, and I would agree with you, that you're going to reach a point where it's like, how many games until Watson's available? Do you make the move to Dobbs? I realize I'm a Tennessee homer, but boy, oh boy, does that man look like Superman from what I have, been able to follow here in the preseason. And I know, again, preseason competition and all of that, but your thoughts on that on the wide receiver room and whether Dobbs is any kind of a potential bridge to when they get Watson back?
Well, I got to tell you what, Dobbs is a conundrum. Let me dive into the wide receiver room.
Mm-hmm.
It is thin is exactly the way to describe it.
Yep.
You have Amari Cooper, and listen, I for some reason everybody kind of forgets about DPJ. The leading receiver for the team last year, in year 2, with a lousy quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and again, some is, I thought DPJ was setting himself up for a breakout here in year 3. Just the progression that I've seen. Now, I think that may be retarded somewhat because of the quarterback play, may just not allow it. But I do like him. And I like David Bell as the Jarvis Landry replacement. You and I talked about that a lot last season.
That's right.
But all the fans like, we can't lose Jarvis. And you and I are like, yeah, we can.
Absolutely.
He's so replaceable, both statistically and Mr. No Yards After Catch, that, the
right.
fans are just like, oh, well, what will we ever do without Jarvis Landry? And you and I are like, I mean, I don't know, win? So, and again, not to knock Jarvis, he's had a great career. He's still a viable NFL wide receiver, and I hope he does great in New Orleans. But the idea that he was somehow irreplaceable to this team is just nonsense.
Right.
And I think they went out and they got David Bell specifically to be that guy.
Right.
And so again, to my earlier point in the last segment, which is you can't rely on rookies to be stars in year 1. Sometimes they pop and they are, and you go, wow, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with David Bell's injury history, I don't think we should expect him to be Jarvis Landry in year 1, although he's going to flash greater skills at moments that excite fans.
Right.
So, again, I like what they've done with, they've got DPJ. I love the steal of Cooper, drafting of Bell. But you're right. I mean, if Cooper goes down,
boy.
Man, I just don't. I don't know what to make of it. It's begging for a problem. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
And a guy like Schwartz, I said, as fast as he is, we wanted him as you said earlier today to me, as a gadget guy who could maybe eventually develop into something a little bit more. But to rely on him, in year 2 after he missed a bunch of time with injuries last year, is anything more than that is foolish.
Yeah.
I still think the Browns are going to grab somebody off the waiver wire, some veteran. They've got to have 1 or 2 guys they've got their eyeball on. And then, to your point, it's thin. It's really, really, really thin. And if Cooper goes down, Houston, Cleveland, we have a problem.
Yes.
But that said, in the Stefanski offense, you can't look at it like you do with some other teams. You have to look at pass catchers, and I think in a holistic way, and not just the wide receiver room.
Yes.
And by that I mean the importance of the tight end, right?
Right.
They're paying Njoku like they believe he is ready to make that big step.
Right.
They have cleared the floor for him. Travis Kelce didn't become Travis Kelce until he was 26, 27 years old.
Right.
And that's where David Njoku is right now. And the Browns are paying not on past performance, but they're paying on what they project he can do in this offense.
Right.
And look, we've seen glimpses of it, right? I mean, we've all seen those occasional catches or the run after. We go, where is this guy week in and week out? I'm like, my God.
Right.
And I think some of it in the last couple of years is, look, you had Hooper in there and he wasn't getting all the catches. I think he's on the field 80 to 85% of the time now this year.
Right.
So they gave him the contract and they are going to expect him to perform like Travis Kelce. I think that is clear. He's going to catch a lot of balls, or at least a lot thrown his way, and they're going to expect a lot of production. So you got to include, him and Bryant in the tight end room.
Yep, Harry Bryant, if he can give you anything.
Yeah. Bryant's got to give you something. He's a good pass-catching tight end. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Right.
So that's part of the equation, and then the other part of the equation, of course, is the running backs. I mean, how they use Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb will also, impact the passing game. Now, I will tell you, right now on paper, Brown's passing game is easily bottom 3 in the league.
Ooh.
It just is.
Mm-hmm. It might be, yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of scary. Now, that said, their strength is that line in that running game.
Right.
Okay? And let me tell you, those are strengths. I mean, they are powerful strengths.
But 8 in the box can negate anything.
Right. But if they're going to do 8 in the box, that's going to open lanes.
Right.
And even a veteran like Brissett can find Njoku or Cooper.
Right.
So and again, that's the Stefanski offense, though, right? It's pound, it's run, get you 8 in the box, and then kill you with a tight end over the middle, or kill you with with wide receiver on a post. I mean, like, that's what it is. And so I think they're comfortable with where they are, as long as everybody's healthy, because of what the nature of their offense is. They want Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and David Njoku to carry this offense, and then the wide receivers be available to, break the back occasionally to keep the defense honest.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they want to do, and it's not like the rest of the league that wants to throw it all over the place like they are the Arena League. So I think we have to understand that that's just, at least until Watson is back and the rust is all gone, this is never going to be a pass-happy offense.
Right. That's true.
So, but again, I do. When you talk about the Browns, I like what we've seen a little bit out of Jordan Elliott at the tackle position. I think he's finally, in year 3, looks like he's ready to start. We have worries at the tackle position. I love their defensive draft. I loved, obviously, as you know, folks at home don't know, every time Cade York hits like a 17,000-mile field goal, I text Rick.
Yep. That's awesome.
You and I both love the Cade York pick.
Yes, absolutely.
And at least right now, it looks like that was the correct move. I mean, he is, the leg on him is real, and it gives you confidence in terms of what you're doing in terms of the offense. And I'll tell you, we're going to need a lot of Cade York this year, I think. Yeah. And we're going to need that kid. It's funny, in that second preseason game, he missed that 55-yard field goal. Because he sort of put it out, and then it was drifting back in. So he missed it at 55 because he hit the upright. But the irony is, it would have been good from 65.
Yeah,
because it was Englishing back in. So and he hit at the top of the bar, towards the top.
Yeah.
I mean, it was literally going to be good from 65.
Yeah.
Now it's like he doinked it at 55, but he ironically would have been good from 65.
Right.
Or even really 57. He would have been good. So even though he doinked that one, I was like, it's okay. Because he's got the leg, he's got the confidence. And that 57-yarder that he hit Saturday night, yesterday, I mean, if you saw it, he had at least, I say 5, but it could be 10 yards extra in terms of where it went through the uprights. So plenty of leg there. And so, again, Browns, I thought, drafted well. Emerson is looking like he's going to be great depth this year with a starting role next year, potentially. I know I've read some stuff from some other teams have said that the fact that Emerson ended up in the 3rd round was a shock to a lot of people, and that the Browns got a steal.
Yeah.
And I think the Browns had no intention of drafting a corner at that point in the 3rd round. But he was on the board, and I think they had him rated, late 1st, early 2nd, and they couldn't believe he was there, and there was no way they weren't taking him.
Yeah.
And so a lot of us fans at the time were like, corner? Like, what are we doing? But they couldn't pass on the value, which is a thing that you ought to love because you're always screaming value.
Right. That's true. Yeah, they got value there. Cade York, I thought that was a tremendous pick because I had said coming into the draft that there was no contender in the NFL that was in more dire need of stability at the kicking position than the Browns. And they addressed that. They did what they needed to do there. And they are part of a fascinating framework here, Chris. This AFC North, the one thing I think we can agree on is that it is a very, very tough division. And that is what breeds some of the questions that we have coming into the season here, I think, is how teams deal with the toughness in this division. And, of course, the non-divisional schedule.
Well, they're going to beat each other up, and all these teams have holes and flaws, right?
Yeah.
The Ravens have their flaws. The Steelers' offensive line is still, I don't think, is right. They're going to have problems there, although they did take a guy I love in George Pickens, a wide receiver.
Yep.
and I was pounding the table for the Browns to take him.
Right, of course.
And now it looks like, yep, he's going to be the real deal, but he's going to be the real deal in Pittsburgh. But they have flaws. They've lost some guys. They've underperformed. The quarterback position is a question mark. The O-line is a real probably now might be the worst in the division. So they're going to have some challenges. The Browns have their challenges, as we outlined in depth. The Bengals' hangover and the tough schedule they're playing is going to be their biggest Achilles. And, if somebody like Jamar Chase is out for any period of time, they're going to have some challenges. And the Ravens, for me, it's just the constant question mark about Lamar Jackson. I know in the end, the numbers always seem to be right, but I think as teams have figured out how to play him, it's going to get harder and harder for them to pull that offense and make it work. And I wonder, since he's negotiating his own contract, if it's going to start to weigh on him this season.
Well, it might.
And that they haven't signed it, and they're not going to sign it, so he's going to play on this fifth year on the contract and with nothing else in hand, and he's betting on himself. And honestly, I think some of it is the Ravens. He's got to be looking for Deshaun Watson money, right?
Easily.
And I think if you're the Ravens, you've got to be thinking, dude, we've literally built this team at every level to fit around you. So on the one hand, we're fully committed, but on the other hand, it's like if you're the Ravens, it's like if he walks, like you're gonna have to retool.
Yeah, very, very much so. And last note that I've got for you here, another feature we've got in Fantasy Football Draftology 2022 is top 10 NFL players on the spot in 2022. And 2 of the top 10 are in this division, number 6 and number 1, and they're both wide receivers. David Bell for the Browns, because he is very vital, as we said, in stabilizing the wide receiver position and of being that possession kind of a guy that I felt like almost more so than Landry that Hollywood Higgins was, and they let him go. He always reminded me of the Brian Brennan role, and they need David Bell to be the Brian Brennan of this team. The number 1 player on the spot, I believe, in the entire league is Rashad Bateman, because it's a situation where, again, he came in as a high draft pick, but this is a thing where if Lamar Jackson is going to reach his destiny, then Rashad Bateman has got to be a legit, no questions asked, number 1 wide receiver in the league. He has the ability, but he hasn't shown enough at the NFL level to where we can be sure and say, oh, it's just a matter of time. So to me, he's the player most on the spot in 2022.
Yeah, I agree. He might. I haven't ranked him as you have, but the Bateman situation is interesting. His rookie season riddled with injuries, so it was a challenge. And then he had the challenge of Lamar Jackson throwing to him until he got injured.
Uh-huh.
And then he had a backup, Huntley, which, they didn't have chemistry per se. So that was a really hard situation.
Yep.
I will be curious to see if Bateman and Jackson get on the same page and build chemistry. Obviously, Marquise Brown couldn't do it.
Right.
And wanted out. And he wanted to go to Arizona, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit.
Yep.
To go play with his old college buddy. But, it is a real... Bateman has to work for the Ravens, or otherwise they'll perpetually be drafting guys because no one will want to go and play with Lamar Jackson.
Absolutely. There is so much that is on the line there for Baltimore in that situation. And overall this season, it is, as we said, a fascinating landscape in the AFC North in 2020. Thank you so much, Chris Galloway. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this mini episode of the FDH Lounge.